can you hear me? This is Kirk.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great.
All right, I see the green light. So we welcome you all to the May meeting, the regular meeting of the Lake Mills Area School District Board of Education. The mission statement for the Lake Mills Area School District is preparing all of today's students for tomorrow's opportunity. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Olson?
Yes, it was posted on the LMASD website and at the Lake Mills Post Office and submitted to the Lake Mills Leader.
All right, with that, I will call the meeting to order. Please rise if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call for attendance?
Brianna Beslick. Here. Andrea Graham.
Here.
Ken Eimers.
Here.
Kirk Lund.
Here.
Amy Litcher.
Here. We'll move on to the agenda revision approval. Are there any revisions to the agenda by any of the board members? Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll move the board approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Second.
All those, do we need a roll call vote? Then all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right. We will move on to the administrative reports and turn it over to Mr. Constantine for the presentation of the Capital Honor students.
Hello, I'm Steve Constantine. I'm the assistant principal at the high school. In most years, the Capital Conference does a top 10 banquet honoring the top 10s from each school at each high school in the Capital Conference. This year, they did not have the banquet, so we wanted to take time in front of the board to honor our top 10. I will call them off in alphabetical order. Dr. Olson will hand you your plaque, and if you could line up there, we'd like to get a picture afterwards. Alphabetically, David Bruce. Angelina Dressel. Carolyn Hanrahan. Gabrielle Marr. Holden Mock. Matthew Nelson. Gracelyn Smith. Chloe Thompson. Caitlin Twesme. Emma Zimmerman. This takes a lot of hard work and sacrifice for 4 years. It's not something that can be done overnight, and let's just give them one more round of applause for their...
Thank you to the students. I know if not the biggest class that came through, it's the highest numbers close to it. And to be in the top 10, including all of the extra activities and the positive things you do for the school district, we thank you and appreciate you. So. All right, moving on to more appreciation. We will ask the presenters for the administrators and supervisors to recognize the LMASD staff's years of service and retirees, starting with Steve Constantine.
Ellen, can you come on up? I have the privilege of talking about Miss Ellen Russell. Ellen has been a French teacher in the district at the high school and middle school for the last 20 years, so we're honoring 20 years of service to the district. She has grown that program basically every year that it's been in its existence. She's also brought the Global Scholars Program to Lake Mills. Being in my position, one of the things that we hear so much when people call, or teachers, or I should say parents call about Ellen, is the amazing relationships that she makes with kids. It's not just kids in the high school, it's kids that graduate, they stay in contact with she's just a huge relationship person, and we appreciate all she's done for the district. Kathy Woline. Kathy has worked in the Lake Mills School District for 33 years, serving a lot of different roles. The last 24, she's been with Student Services and the Athletic Department. She's kind of an institution in Lake Mills. I have two quick stories. When I was first hired, I didn't know much about Lake Mills, but I talked to some athletic directors that I respected, and they said, "You're going to be okay. Kathy Woline is in Lake Mills." And I said, "Who's that?" And they go, "Just learn and do whatever she says." They go, "She knows more than most athletic directors do in the state." And they were right. The other thing is, one of the things with my job is I always meet the officials. And it's amazing. Kathy's worked for 6 athletic directors, and the officials really don't remember the athletic directors' names, but they always ask how Kathy is doing. And a few of them said, "Someday we want to know what she looks like." We always get the phone calls, we get the emails, and she's so pleasant on the phone, we can't say no to Kathy. So I'm really nervous next year for when we start calling officials and they start telling us no because Kathy's not calling. So 33 years, and she's done an amazing job, and we're going to definitely miss her. Congratulations on your retirement.
All right, Nate Grundle, assistant principal at the middle school. I get the honor of recognizing 3 of the staff members. I'll start with Tracy Voigt. Come on up, Tracy. Tracy is our 7th grade math teacher this year. She's taught 6th grade math and I believe a little bit of 8th grade math at one point in time in her 25 years here at Lake Mills. She is a rock and a foundation in our math team. She runs our math team. That is, we have a team going to state next week for our 7th and 8th graders that are competing in the state meet. She's always there with new ideas, and she's always looking out for our students and their best interests, whether they're cozied up next to her on the desk as she's working through problems one by one with them, or she's up in front of the class leading them. She's a valuable member of our school community. Tracy Voigt, 25 years. All right, next is Julie Schwecke. Come on up, Julie. Julie gets 2 awards tonight. She has 20 years of service in the Lake Mills School District, and she's retiring at the end of the year. The best thing about Julie, that is when you walk through our halls in the middle school, you'll always see our students' artwork up on the walls. You walk through, every year, she's got 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade pieces of art up there for students to see and other students to demonstrate the great things that they're learning in art. Every year we have a quarter of clay where kids are getting messy and dirty, and she always handles it well. With middle schoolers, and clay is always an interesting situation. She always, when we went to virtual, one of the things that I remember Julie coming into the school and putting kits together for kids that she could hand to them during our virtual learning during COVID. Still has the kits in her classroom right now because it keeps it organized, but she always dedicated going above and beyond for our students and making sure they had everything they needed to do the art in her class. In retirement, she's going to go camping, she's going to hang out with some of her grandkids, and she's going to get back into her textile arts and have a lot of fun there. So Julie, thank you for your years of service, and I know we're going to miss you. All right, next we have Jan Vandeheyden. Jan, we've only known each other for 2 years, but that's okay. Jan has been in the district 32 years in various roles in the library as a library aide. She spent, we did the math today, 9 years in the high school, which meant that we are 23 years in the middle school. She was talking about some stories. She's been there through the whole renovation of the middle school. She talked about moving a library when the renovation went in, and she's talking about today when the kids came back and they were doing like a fireman line of books. Train of boxes, bringing those books back in the library, in our brand new library when we did the renovation. She also had some interesting stories about popcorn and fire alarms and all those things that happen at the middle school. For one of our other teachers, will not name him. But taking 100 kids one time, she also, out of the middle school lunch room and a fire drill during a lunchtime. If you've ever been in middle school during lunchtime, the 100 students leaving the building was always an interesting, but she handled it well. She said it was the best fire drill we've ever had. Good job. All right. In retirement, Jan is going to be taking on her green thumb, lots of gardening around the community in her own garden. And she's going to do some traveling. She wants to get out to England, and her writing. She is an avid writer, and she's part of the Lake Mills Writers Club. Jan, thank you for your years of service. We will miss you greatly.
Hi, I'm Erin Seachlug. I'm the principal at Lake Mills Elementary School, and the first person that I'm going to recognize tonight is Mr. Joe Kiefer. So come on up. Joe has been with the Lake Mills Area School District for 20 years. That's 20 years of paint and clay and glue and markers and scissors in the hands of kids that are under the age of 10. If you've never seen that, you should bow down to him now. It is quite the feat, and we are very lucky to have an artist as our art teacher. For those of you who don't know, which I don't know how you don't, he is a passionate artist, and so we are very fortunate to have him and our kids to learn from him. He is here because 20 years of service is a big thing, and we are very much appreciate you. Up next is Mrs. Tracy Zietlow, who we are recognizing for 20 years of service as well. So as many of you know, it's my first year in the district, and one of the first teachers that I got to spend a lot of time was with Tracy. I spent a few weeks at the beginning of the school year as a para for a new student who came. And so in that short amount of time, I got to learn a lot about how she is as a person, but also as a teacher. She has what appears to be boundless energy and patience. She is phenomenal at thinking on her feet. And it never ceases to amaze me how willing she is to jump in and help. As we were considering, numbers and things, and I went to the kindergarten team and said, hey, I need someone to go to first grade. She said, I'll do it. She's not going to, someone else is, but she just does it. And I think that personifies her very well. She's going to do what's always best for kids. And I feel very fortunate that I've gotten to know you so well this year. And congratulations on 20 years. My final recognition is for the retirement of Joanne Russo. Come on up. She brought a cheering section with her. So Joanne has been in the Lake Mills School District for 22 years and is an integral part of our team. As you can see by some of the people in the back, they're very sad to see her go. I don't know if it's just because of how she mentors them and mothers them, or if it's because she supplies them with caffeine on a regular basis. But I can tell you from just my time here that it's really all those things. She's an amazing educator who doesn't ask for much, but comes in and works with kids and has great ideas for supporting every learner in her classroom, and then also helps her team around her. Over the summer, I know she's super busy, and then I think she talked about retiring, but what she meant by that is that she's gonna come back and sub for us all the time. She may or may not know that, but we can't wait to hopefully see her in our building, whether that's as a volunteer or as a sub, because it just isn't gonna be the same place without you. Congratulations, Joanne.
Hello, I'm Amanda Thompson, the Director of Teaching and Learning, and tonight I'm going to honor Jenny Nichols. I had to write all my thoughts down, otherwise I could go on and on and on. Jenny and I have worked together since our days in Kettle Moraine. We have been through several educational changes, life changes, and career changes together. I can't imagine my life without Jenny in it. Jenny is the kind of person that others gravitate towards. Her honesty, humor, and sheer brilliance make me and others want to sit with her for long hours, learning, laughing, and planning for the next big thing. Jenny has left her legacy on our schools, most significantly our elementary school, as she has created a culture of literacy that has every teacher thinking about how they can help kids fall in love with books, teach students to use their voice for change, and plan their own goals for growth. We have had a well-established book club at the elementary school for many years, with staff members coming together after sharing a book and talking about the many moments that have struck our hearts. Jenny didn't let that conversation stop there. She brought the work of our book clubs into our staff meetings and in-services to share new research and work through the best ways to reach our students. Book clubs have helped our students see their experiences in others and help striving readers find authors they love. There have been countless times I've observed readers that have once refused to open a book, searching the shelves of Mrs. Nichols' room to find their next great story. Jenny, you have undoubtedly changed the culture of our school, not only educationally, but also the humans within it. You sparked staff outings that took 16 staff members to Colorado and 25 people to Door County. Your laughter will remain in our ears, your thoughtfulness in our hearts, and the confidence you saw in each one of us to do more than we ever thought possible will last a lifetime. Thank you for all you've done for us.
Hello, I'm Rod Hutchins, Director of Facilities, and I want to recognize Randy Lucas tonight for his retirement. Randy, where are you? On up. Under the spotlight. So Randy's going to retire, and this is going to be a big thing to fill his spot, as he's been here for 13 years, and in that time, he's come to know pretty much everything that goes on in the middle school. So whoever, well, we know who it is, they're going to have a lot of responsibilities to learn. Randy, I'm not really sure what exactly you're planning for in retirement, but we wish you luck, and I just want to thank you for all you've done for the past 13 years. Thanks. Next, I'd like to introduce and recognize Mark Ward. Where are you, Mark? Mark is going to retire from the high school, and he's been there for 10 years. Mark first became involved with the district as a wrestling coach, so he's got a long history of involvement here. And you probably don't know, he does a lot of things behind the scene every day before anybody even gets to school. So just want to thank you for all the things you've done for the district, and wish you your best in retirement.
Thank you to all the retirees and years of service. We appreciate it as a board. I appreciate it as a parent. And I can only imagine all the years, and thank you for the years of service at the school district and all the years of change that you've encountered. So we appreciate it, and I appreciate it.
Nobody wants to stick around for the roof bids?
We're talking audits and budgets next, no?
All right, moving on with the administrative reports, I will turn it over to Ms. Tasha Naylor.
Hi. Okay, so as I said, we're going to talk budgets and audits next. And the crowd, as the crowd clears out. So I just wanted to report that Lake Mills was chosen for a membership audit this year, and it's not something that's done every year. Every district will have a membership audit once every 4 years, or they could be chosen randomly. So I think we were at our 4th year, but a membership audit basically is to make sure that we're in compliance with our pupil counts and the reports that and the numbers report to GPI. So that audit was successful. Everything came back with no findings from we used our auditor that we used for our regular audit, Whitfley, and I did attach the results on board docs. Next, I also, as promised, I wanted to report again on the budget to actuals for the 21-22 school year. And after another month of actual numbers, after the data was brought in, we still are going to be likely ending the year in a deficit, but I'm happy to report that I think that it'll be a little bit more favorable than I had originally thought with the $300,000 deficit. I'm anticipating closer to 2, and maybe with another month after this, I come back and it's even better. But some of the things that are going to change that number are those final payrolls that we have at the end of the year. That's kind of as you know, staffing is our biggest expenditure. So as those come in, the estimates a small percentage of that could fluctuate, but seem like a big percentage overall, if that makes sense, seeming that it's such a big part of the budget. Other things that could impact that are gonna be the special education cost transfer that we have into the Fund 27, sorry. And then also whatever invoices we get for the JEDI program and our CAP program. So those invoices come in. There's some of the bigger ones that come in at the end of the year in June. So those will fluctuate these projections. And then I wanted to let you know the quick timeline on the 22-23 budget. I will bring a preliminary budget to you next month, and that is going to include any of the known facts that I have for next year as far as expenditures and revenues. And then in July or August, after DPI releases the aid estimates, I will be able to bring a even more accurate budget to you then. And then finally in October, after the state equalization aid allocations are released, we'll approve the official budget, and that's after October 15th. So that's just kind of the timeline of what's coming forward for 22-23 budget. Okay, any questions with any of that? Okay. Then next I'm going to actually ask Mr. Hutchins back up to, he's going to talk to you a little bit about the high school roofing bids that we have. They are all attached in board docs. And this is part of that Fund 41 Capital Improvement Fund that we have that $150,000, but we're talking about next year's budget number there. So we have to talk through these roof bids now to get everything secured. So Rod is going to go through that for you.
As Tasha said, these projects are for the next fiscal year, and obviously in order to do them this coming summer, we have to plan ahead. So what we're doing here is we're replacing 2 sections of roofing on the high school, and procured 3 different bids. Basically, we're going to go with Badgerland out of Watertown. We do have a long-standing relationship with them. They've done several roofing projects for us. So low bid, and we essentially do trust their product. Any questions?
Are you required to get a certain number of bids?
We typically get 3.
Okay.
If we can.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Then we will go to the administrative report from Dr. Olson.
So I just have one update with the CAP program, or Crossroads Alternative Plan. So as we had been discussing earlier, we had co-opted with a 6603 agreement with the Johnson Creek School District. The Johnson Creek School District no longer has a need for this program, and so they will be discontinuing that agreement with us. And so we had discussed earlier about starting an ad hoc committee to study the possibility of bringing this program in-house into the school district even before that. However, with this new revelation, it's forcing us to speed this process up a bit. I think we still need the ad hoc committee because we still have work to do on the program. However, I'm asking the board to make a decision tonight on creating the at-risk position here in the school district, which is why that is an action item later in the agenda. You could see from the cost estimates, we are currently paying a little over $100,000 for this program. Obviously, we're going to have staffing costs, but we will no longer have the transportation costs that we're currently having. And so we'll, depending on the teacher that is hired pending the board's approval, we'll have a better idea of the costs of this program. I think one of the reasons we started talking about bringing this program over into the school district is we thought we could provide a better instructional program for our students. And by better, I just meant something that fit the students without transportation. Before, we were busing students back and forth to Johnson Creek, and so it made the work experience placement very difficult on some of those students, depending on if they were in the morning program or in the after program. We'd like to, through this committee, revamp that program and provide the education to get the credits for graduation, but also advance the academic and career planning to be able to get students out into the workforce, get them some different skills to help them be successful in life. Currently, we're finding space in the downstairs of the high school to be able to run this program. So we will start working on that immediately. We're expecting probably about 10 students. It fluctuates back and forth through the year. So sometimes the students that start the program aren't in the program necessarily all year. Sometimes students will enter the program during the course of the year. So the numbers just go up and down as needed. So any other questions about that? We've actually, we're very hopeful about being able to hire a teacher for this program, so.
I was going to ask, there's no staff currently that are interested in that, or has that been proposed to any staff that?
It does require an at-risk license, so we don't have any staff that are currently licensed to be able to do this program. We did have that conversation to see, do we pull a special ed teacher? You don't need a special ed license for that, but we did look at our current staffing and thought, well, let's see if there's somebody out there that has experience with running a program like that and go that route first.
What kind of license is it?
It's an at-risk license.
Oh, at-risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then are they, if they're in the program, are they like restricted to that program, or can they join in if there's an elective that they want to? I just feel like the community feel the program being in Lake Mills would be positive.
That was the goal when we started discussing bringing this program into the school district. We thought it would allow for greater flexibility with students taking electives, so that if we had students that wanted to take one of the ag classes or one of the tech ed or any music elective, that they would have the flexibility to be able to build out their schedule accordingly, whereas they were pretty locked into a schedule over in Johnson Creek. And like I said, no fault to Johnson Creek School District at all. It's just with the transportation hurdle, that's just the way the programming was. So I think we'll be able to offer a nice instructional program for students in this program.
And then who would be on the ad hoc? Like, how do you go about?
We had started talking before the board election, and I know, Ken, you had expressed interest about being on the ad hoc. We had talked about some of the high school administration and some of the district office administrators, but hopefully some community people. We just haven't gotten that far yet, right. But it would be nice to have a well-rounded committee to take a look at the needs.
Thank you. Do we expect any Johnson Creek students, or
No.
are we going to? Okay.
And that's why they initially called us. They said, we can continue to provide this service, but they don't have any students, and their teacher had since resigned. So they had initially said, well, do you want us to hire a teacher and keep that going? And we just said, that doesn't make sense. We'll just hire our own teacher. So.
All right, any other questions? All right, we'll move on. And on to the board reports, and Sydney Williams, our student board rep.
Hi, I'm Sydney Williams. I'm the senior class president, and I'm here to give you some updates on the high school. Baseball currently is off to a good start to their season, or a good start to their conference season, with facing some tough competition with lots of scouts being there to watch a Columbus pitcher. This week they have a game against Poynette and Johnson Creek at home, and also have a game against Lakeside on Friday. Softball, they're currently 7-1 in conference, having a really great season. They have a game this week against Poynette and Lakeside. Track, since the last meeting, they have started their outdoor season. Both girls and boys teams have been successful in many different events. They have a meet today at Poynette and Belleville this week as well. Girls soccer, they are currently 3-1 in conference with having an amazing season. They have games this week at home against Lakeside and a game against Evansville later this week. Golf has also had a great season as well, with having countless meets at random times and being very flexible with rain. They had a meet today at Bigfoot. They have a meet later this week at Lodi and New Glarus as well. A couple weekends ago, the high school had their prom, which was a great success, with Riley Kulo and Gibson Hale being our prom king and queen. Many students attended, and overall, I would say it was a very fun time. And then for our music department, over the past couple weeks, all of our schools have had music, all their concerts, like I think the elementary school has one this week, middle school had one last week, high school had a couple over the past couple weeks. But I would say overall, it has been a great music season, and are very thankful for having these music programs. Thank you.
All right, well, this being your last meeting, Sydney, we really want to thank you for serving as the 2021-2022 student board rep. And as well as being a extremely positive and valued member of the high school, we appreciate you taking your time and being on the board as the student rep. We look forward to seeing what you're going to be doing and your pursuits, and we also really enjoy for you to be a future alum, and because we know you will represent the Lake Mills Area School District very, very well.
Thank you.
Oh, and we have a gift.
Pictures. Thank you. Oh, perfect.
Moving on, we go on to the first reading for policy. We'll go to Ken Eimers.
Sure, thank you. Dr. Olson, Dawn Delaney, and I met as a policy committee on April 12th to go over recommendations on our policies. And just a brief background here, there's an organization called, is it Neola?
Neola.
They're a national outfit, but they do specialize in Wisconsin as well. And it's Dr. Olson and Dawn were telling me about, there used to be big binders. Now this is all board docs and, pretty slick. But we did go over each of the recommendations that they were making. And in your packet, there's a nice summary of the policies you'll see there. That is very helpful. And that's under draft policies in board docs. You'll also see some interesting, and so those we'd like you to review, and then at the next board meeting, we would take action on those policies. Just a couple interesting notes. There are some additional, what they would call legal alerts, 3 at the national level, 1 at the Wisconsin level, of what they would consider important items for education that I thought was pretty interesting. I'd say if you were to characterize this set of policies, of course it's quite broad in subject matter, but pretty minor. Most of it were compliance oriented, or maybe changes relative to clarity or consistency. Some requiring more detail, others they require less detail. Some of the language they would change to make a little more user-friendly or more modern, with the times kind of language. So those are basically what you'll see when you're going through the policies, and the green in the policies is what's being added, the red is what's being taken out for your, and just as another note, there's in there, when you go into draft policies, there's a thing called a policy checklist, which does list all the policies in an outline form, but it also gives you an idea of the numbering scheme for the policies. That's kind of helpful you can see what numbers relate to what parts of the education district for us. So,
The only thing I wanted to quick add, as if you're looking through those policies, is I pulled policy 5722 on the school-sponsored publications and productions, just because I need to work with Mr. Vogel on that. We have a current policy in place, and so I didn't want to suggest any revisions without meeting with him first, because it affects the high school more so than anyone else, so I wanted his input on the revisions on that policy. So that's the only one that's pulled.
okay. Any questions on that at all? Okay. No questions. The other item I have for us is a nice thank you note from Dr. Dawn Delaney. And I'll read the notes with my glasses. Okay, here we are. To the Lake Mills Area School District, April 2022. Thank you for hosting the reception and for honoring my years of service with the beautiful vase, flowers, and gift certificate. It has been a privilege to serve with the thoughtful and inspiring board members over the past 9 years, as well as a team of educators, administrators, staff, and community members who genuinely value education and work together to find solutions that meet the needs of all of our students. Wishing you continued success in providing high-quality public education to the children of our community. Respectfully, Dawn Delaney. She also had a special thanks to Tanya for your strong leadership and vision for our students and schools, and to Megan for your positive attitude, friendliness, and ability to always make it all happen. So I will miss seeing you both regularly. All the best, Dawn.
If there's nothing else, no other questions, then we will move on to the next item for board discussion. And board discussion, we don't need a motion to discuss, and it can be and can't, we can either table action items regarding this, have them at future meetings, or decide to have them if it's on the agenda for tonight. So, the discussion about the district health insurance cost increase.
So thanks for being patient with Tasha and me as we went through this. We had the committee meeting and talked through with Al Yeager about the different possibilities with insurance. And I know, as probably like many of you, as we sat and digested that information, and we're getting closer to the board meeting and just looking at everything that was going on, it was just kind of hard to make what I felt like a quick change just for the sole purposes of budget reasons. And I know that obviously with getting no new monies from the state for 2 years, budget is our top concern. But then we also are concerned about retaining staff and staff culture and making sure that we feel like we're not blindsiding staff with not giving them enough notice. So we discussed, there's a couple of different options with Al, and I think in the bottom line, it was almost like putting the cart before the horse, because we have this benefits committee that's going to meet for the first time on Friday, and it felt like we were going, that we were making some decisions ahead of that committee, and which would maybe force us to do 2 different things to insurance benefits in 2 years in a relatively short amount of time. So Tasha and I discussed a bunch of different options. Of course, all of this before the open enrollment period here in May and June. So thought, okay, that one option is, do we just absorb the 5.5% increase this year? It'll just mean a little bit of an increase for health insurance premiums for staff, but we use, we look at ESSER 3 monies again. I know the board discussed not wanting to supplant some of the deficit, even though that's what the legislators, wanted us to look at, but we are going into next year with a significant deficit, and it's like, do we just say, okay, that 1 year will buy us some time to get the committee going and really have a cross-section of staff working through those decisions or really understanding the decisions we're also trying to make with health insurance benefits, whether that has to do with changing deductibles, whether it looks at the percentage of the contribution that the district contributes towards that, looking at the HRA portion of the benefits, just being able to look at everything. We just thought, with the $2,500, $5,000 deductible plan, it just looked like that group of staff was going to be really hit significantly with those increases, and only because we fund that option at a higher rate than the other ones. So it was just with everything else going on in the world of education, it was just, that was going to be a significant hit. And we thought there's probably some other things we could do over the course of the year. So we put in a couple of options. One, is do nothing. We pay the current percentage. Staff sees a very slight increase, and that's in that document. We weren't quite sure what to do with the cash in lieu, with the alternative benefit. With that, do we just leave that alone as well? Because I'm assuming that as that committee comes around next year, that cash in lieu will be affected in some way, shape, or form. So do we just wait and do it as part of the whole package? Or do you do it now, and is that a double hit, basically, for staff? Two, we could move forward with that proposed plan from the committee meeting. Like I said, I'm nervous because we really haven't done any communication out to staff. That does save us about $121,000. And then we started talking about, do we look at the Hra contribution? Do we back off on that? That does take a whole plan design change because we fund that through a different company, and we'd have to pay them to do the plan design changes. And so I thought, well, that's going to be really a rush to try to, possibly decrease the amount that we're putting, into an employee's HRA. And some of this, I know staff tend to hold off on, medical procedures and things like that to the summer. So we don't know what staff is, has coming up. And so if you're planning some type of medical procedure, were you already banking on this particular HRA? So then to take that away with very little notice would be concerning as well. So, like I said, a couple of different options. The board definitely, can choose which way to go with that. That would be my recommendation, is just due to the fact that we were changing our broker at the same time that we got the increase, and we were going through that information, that it didn't give us enough time to really communicate with staff, or get the committee started even earlier. So when we talked with Al, and with him looking at our plan, we thought there is an opportunity next year for some significant savings, and it doesn't have to all be on the backs of the teachers, or I shouldn't say teachers, the whole staff necessarily, but just by making some different changes. I would think it'd be better to do it all at once. Everybody's affected all at the same time. We have staff input. We have time to communicate those changes.
Any questions?
Can you remind me, is this usually the time of year in which this always comes up?
It usually comes up about mid-March, but
Okay.
the district has not, is that right? The renewal. So the district has not had to make a decision on the last 3 years because we've had a 0% increase. So nothing has changed as far as health insurance benefits for 3 years, just because we haven't had to deal with the increase. And then, right when we were notified of the increase was almost in the exact same meeting was when we notified our broker that we were going away from Horton Group and we were moving over to USI. And that was the creation of a new booklet and just starting to meet with Al and getting things up and going. And subsequently, we really didn't meet about making some of the changes to the health insurance benefits. I think a lot of it was the timing, and we had the board election right about that time and just with different meetings, so, but yes, normally we would be working on this already by the end of March.
So then was that Al's thinking that potentially next year we could see some savings then that would affect that 22-23 budget if we were to make some changes down the road?
Right, I mean, I think we don't have a whole lot of options. We do need to make some changes because we do need to decrease that amount of money that we're paying for health insurance benefits. And, I mean, we've been fortunate because we have seen a zero increase in the district, so health insurance costs have not gone up for staff either. So, I mean, like, and part of that, has to do with COVID. People didn't go to the doctor for 2 years, and now you're seeing post-COVID, I mean, a lot, people are finally catching up with a lot of medical issues. And so, and really a 5.5% increase is a modest increase when I see what other districts are facing, and sometimes that can go into the double digits. But like I said, we had questions even, last summer about, our plan design and why was this decision made, or it's just time to look at everything across the board with that. And I do believe there's a lot of room for some savings there.
And just to clarify, Brianna, it would be the 23-24. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Savings.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So this would be a comprehensive plan implemented in at one time for the 23-24 season. To me, it made sense after we met and talked about this that, needing more time, not wanting to get unintended consequences from something that, we didn't realize was going to create issues. And so I was kind of attracted to that idea of looking at the whole picture. And it just seems like over the course of this coming months, that would give us the time to, I think, make more informed choices, I guess, is really it. So.
I just, kind of, Tasha and I use the word ripping the Band-Aid off twice, and sometimes that can be hard. One year, you've got a partial plan change, and then you come around the very next year, and now you make another plan change. That's really, really hard on staff. It's really hard.
I agree. I think if we're going to be doing multiple changes, and we just talked about this like a week ago, there really hasn't been a lot of time to discuss it and look at all the options. And then I think as much as we can collaborate, the better. There's no reason why we can't collaborate. And then with the budget coming out the next month, you'll see numbers on salaries and things like that too. So all of those things kind of come into play.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's fine.
I tend to have, I said to Tanya, I tend to have that tunnel vision of cost savings, and that's why I really appreciate the collaboration, because it just brings everything together. And it's more than just that. There's lots of things that we need to talk about and consider. So, doing my job is the cost savings, but I appreciate that we can have these conversations and really think about all of it. So.
Well, and I think, in education, when you've got a free market out there, and it's hard to hire not only for teachers, but for custodians and support staff. And so I think we just need to be very strategic about what happens with benefits, because we definitely can't afford to lose any other staff members because, a plan changes and it's easier to go to a different district or even into the private sector, for a position. So I think having staff voice on this committee is invaluable.
I think for me too, the option 2, the proposal, I'm just worried about the difference in increase. That higher deductible, it was like a 40% increase, whereas the lower deductible is only like 5. So then I think about, hourly employees who maybe are taking that $2,500 deductible, and that's just going to affect them so much more as opposed to maybe a teacher who's been teaching for 30 years and is higher up on the salary schedule. So I think that's the other thing to think about, is that these healthcare benefits affect all the staff members of the school district, not just the teachers on the salary schedule. and our EAs and SEAs who are getting that insurance too. So I think involving them in the committee to just trying to get a cross-section of as many staff members as we can.
And we did get some more responses to that, so we have a team of, I want to say, 12 staff members, not including Tanya, myself, and a couple others, and Al, that'll be part of that as well. So we have a good cross-section of different, and I did spend a decent amount of time kind of trying to dig through some old files to try to see what the conversations were in the past about the logic behind how we created our plans. I wasn't as successful with answers that I wanted to get, but I'm still digging and trying to research, some of that. And I think that'll be useful as we go into those meetings, to talk about why, if I can find out.
I have a question. If we would do nothing and potentially use ESSER funds to help the stopgap, what potential things would we lose from our ESSER plans?
I think that's what we have to look, and it wouldn't be just, I guess, using ESSER to fund, the insurance. I think, just the overall deficit, once we see what that's looking like. I know we have monies committed for, the maintenance projects in the district. We do have the school psychologists hired already, so that money is dedicated. So we could bring that back in June and look at, okay, this is, and then additionally with the rest of the ESSER 3 plan being funded, I think that was an additional $46,000-ish and some change. So we were waiting for that last piece from the federal government. So, but right, it would still be eligible expenses, obviously, but it just means not moving forward with some of the hiring that we were hoping to do at this point, just because looking at how to also sustain that as well until we get some indication from the state of what funding will be in another year.
Okay, any other questions? All right. I don't know, should we, for an agenda, the agenda item under 7A, shall we just table that, the action item under 7A, and shall we do nothing until we know more and put that on the June's agenda?
And you don't, if you don't make a motion on that action item, you really don't need to do anything with it. Sometimes we'll notice that with possible action, in a discussion item, but I just left it down in the action items below, so.
Okay. Then moving on, potential operational referendum.
Okay, I have provided a document here that gives a little bit more of an itemized list of what makes up that potential operational referendum for the upcoming potential building. So if you have access to or have that document there, I'm not sure if you had a chance to go over it and look at it at all. You're all shaking your heads, yes. So I just thought it would, and Tanya and I thought it would be important to kind of give that itemized list of what is the makeup of that $950,000. And as I have been reporting, it's primarily staff, and you can see that in there. And this would be the additional staff that's needed on top of the staff that could move with the students or the grade levels and move with them. So we would need the secretarial staff in the office. So similar to our current building, we have a full-time and a part-time, or a 10-month in that position. And those are the current wages and fringe benefits in there. So they're estimates, but same thing with the custodial staff, 2 a.m., 2 p.m., food service staff, that's equivalent to what we have now and what we operate with now in a like-sized building. The counselor, the health room nurse, it would be a portion of that contract would be to the new building, potential new building. Library media specialist, reading specialist, and potentially a full one FTE of specials, depending on how schedules are done and how they're shared between buildings. So that's the makeup of the staffing portion of it. And then also I did some comparisons to the current elementary building. So again, I kind of looked at that square footage and tried to use utility costs that are like a like building. And with the rising costs, I did build in a little bit there, but estimating about 100,000, that would be just in gas, heat, that kind of utilities. Maintenance costs can vary at all times, just depending. I built that in there kind of for an ongoing maintenance cost and maintenance budget. Hopefully that's not something we'll need right away because we'll have a brand new building potentially. But that's something that I think is important as we think about all the buildings, that there is that ongoing maintenance cost as well. In addition to that, every building has a technology budget as they work through with their smart boards, and we have a cycle that we go through with updating and staying current with technology. So that's built in there as well. That gives that roughly $950,000. So I thought it was important to show that to you all. Obviously, I've got big block letters on the top that say draft because this can be adjusted, but kind of the makeup and the thought process behind where that number came from.
There's not a principal on there.
Right, there's not.
Why?
We're hoping to be able to absorb that with our current staff that we have.
So we have an AP at the middle school, so maybe.
Right, so with the size of the buildings then decreasing, there wouldn't be necessarily a need for an assistant principal at the middle school. Would rework that.
The other thing I saw, which maybe answered my own question just now, is the just general building budget. Do you plan on just taking what would have been at, the elementary and the middle school, because those kids are being pulled to, okay.
I think portions of them, yes. The technology might be a little bit different because you do have those rooms, right, that are going to need the smart boards and things like that. And currently that's what most of the buildings are using that $11,000 for each year, is rotating through updating the smart boards in the room. In my long time that I've been here, that's what's been happening. But yes, some of that teacher budget and things like that would move with, be adjusted.
And then did you take the average salary of that position in the district, or did you take, like, for example, like the top earning secretary and put that?
I
just
actually
wonder if
took
there's enough.
an entry level, but then for
okay.
fringe benefits, I took the highest cost of benefits. So obviously there'll be some fluctuation, but I like to be conservative. They could all need that high cost benefit potentially, but hopefully there would be a little fluctuation with that and maybe some cost savings if they didn't. So that can adjust from year to year, really, The other piece of it that might be important to either discuss or think about is whether we want this to be recurring, a 5-year. I don't have the experience of going through what the best option is, but I just feel like it's a point to make and something to think about. The costs aren't going to go away from year to year. They're still going to be there. So just depending on how we feel and what we think, and just a discussion topic that could be part of this, or should be, I should say.
Since it's a budget tied to a referendum, once we're up and running and maybe 2 years down the road, are we still tracking against the initial referendum dollar amount? Do you know what I'm saying? Or does it become part of the whole picture? I mean, it would be part of the whole school budget. But as a referendum, is there special handling then for that over time?
The operational part of it?
Yeah.
It's levied different. It's levied annually.
Okay.
But it would be part of those tax dollars that come in. So once it's levied in our cash flow, it's not necessarily tracked differently than any other tax dollars.
Good.
Where do the things like desks and chairs, is that part of the building budget?
When we pass the construction portion of the building referendum, that can all be purchased out of that portion at that time. So the initial outfitting of the smart boards and things like that will come from that portion of the budget to start out with. It doesn't have to come out of the operational, but usually they have an allowance in that overall construction budget for furniture. It's usually a percentage of the budget so that we can get that all in. So the building should be complete when we start.
Are there any other questions?
I guess if we decide to go to referendum, then it doesn't pass. Down the road, do you see us needing another operation, like the way things are going? Are we needing, I mean, unless something changes at the state level, we're going to need.
I mean, we've seen in this past election, there were a lot of operational referenda that were passed just because, you know, there hasn't been any new funding, so a lot of districts are going for the operational just to be able to balance the budget.
Okay.
So those have not been recurring. Those have been in like 5-year increments typically. Usually you only see a recurring referendum in usually 2 cases. One, when you're bringing a new building online and you know that those costs don't go away, or I've seen that in some of the smaller school districts that are passing a referendum just to keep their doors open and they need that money into perpetuity.
Okay, thank you.
If it is a reoccurring, is there a time where we can say like, okay, it all balances out, like the kids coming in, like we can say we don't need it anymore?
It's a not to exceed, so we can borrow up to what we need out of that.
Okay.
Or I shouldn't say borrow, levy for.
I think this should be on continuing the discussion on a monthly basis up until the decision needs to be made, so.
I agree.
All right, moving on to the four-year-old kindergarten program discussion.
I'm just going to make this brief. You know, as we started to look at, you know, a potential new building, it has forced us to take a closer look at the 4K program overall, just in order to be able to offer a program that I think meets the needs of kids and our families. And so one of the things I found interesting is that we offer 4K only 4 days a week. And then, I mean, our teachers work 5 days a week because there is that requirement for outreach. But I know with looking and hearing from families about daycare issues and not being able to find daycare, I think it's time to look at our 4K program overall and that need to possibly go from 4 days a week to 5 days a week. We have a certain number of hours that we are required to meet, so it obviously mean adjusting the times during the day. We wouldn't need as many hours during the day if it was spread out over 5 days instead of 4. But as we were starting to talk about the potential of wraparound childcare for that, that's actually when this topic arose, and we said, well, what would we do on Fridays for wraparound care? We can't offer full day childcare at that time. So it would actually increase our costs a bit, and that's why I want to really take time to look through this with the budget, because currently our paras don't work a full day on Friday over at the Methodist Church because those 2 ladies are not our employees. We actually pay the Methodist Church through the contract and they employ them, and so they don't have them work on Fridays when the teachers are doing their outreach. Ours, I believe ours work on Fridays. Don't check that. Yes, okay. So it was just looking at how we deliver services all around, and what I'd like to do is actually survey our parents. I mean, that's another thing where I don't want to say like, hey, we're going to change to 5 days a week, and maybe parents in the community think like, I like the 4 days a week, you know, it works really well for our families. So I'd like to just start asking parents, you know, if we were to change to that, would you be in favor of that? You know, what kind of childcare needs, you know, do you have? Are there any childcare needs at all? And just start getting some information from families. So the only change then would be how we do our outreach activities, and I put some examples in there that even family nights and things like that in the building can count as outreach. I'm not too concerned about getting those necessary minutes, and school districts do it all the time with 5 days a week, 4K. So I'm just, like I said, I'm just kind of like starting the conversation on that before we go any further.
I was going to ask, what districts around us, do they have 5-day 4K, or are most of them 4-day?
That's something I'd have to look into. I haven't gone that far to ask. I only probably can tell you what like my grandchildren have experienced, and that's been 5 days a week for 4K. In my previous district, I ran it 5 days a week, and
Okay. So it's
Really-
not uncommon.
no. In fact, I met with Jill Underly, the state superintendent, on Friday, and she did start the discussion of the possibility of moving to full-day 4K in the near future, that is going to be something that they are possibly going to start advocating for funding for it. So we'll see what happens with that.
How does that work with the teacher planning and prep? Because they're nonstop go
Yeah.
from the time they walk in to the time they walk out. Does that still give them the equivalent amount of time with that break in the middle to cover?
That's what we'd have to look into, so that they'd be teaching a shorter amount of time each day, which would provide them a larger amount of time in between the two sessions. So I think we have to examine all of that to make sure they still have enough prep time, because I don't think we want to get into the fact of offering, art, music, and Phi-Ed to 4K. That's not the goal of the 4K program, nor would we be able to make our special schedule run if we had to do that. So like I said, I would like to sit down and actually just explore all of those options. What is the cost for doing that? And then just see, is that something that's feasible in the district? If it's not, that's fine as well.
Have you talked to the 4K teachers, the current teachers, about this possibility at all? And have
I
they-
was looking back for the principals. Erin has talked with them, and they seem to be agreeable for that. They, according to her, she said that they would rather teach the 5 days a week. I mean, you could imagine, right, they do not get any breaks pretty much at all for those 4 days a week until Friday. So,
And then I was thinking too, depending on what parents want, I mean, could we have like one that's 5 days? And like, say, I know St. Paul does, where you can do like 3 days, like you can do Monday, Tuesday, or you can do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or at least when my son went there. So maybe different options for different needs, like a pilot program, like let's try the 5 day a week with one of the classes and see.
I've seen it, like I said, when in the previous district where I worked, because we're a much larger district, we did have one section of 4K that did run the 4 days a week, because we did have a group of parents that asked for that, and we had enough students in that program to be able to maintain that yearly.
Would this be for the 2022-23 year?
I don't
Okay.
think that would not be my recommendation, just once again with communication. It's already May, and I think parents are starting to plan for things, and it would affect our budget, and it would affect our contract that we have with the Methodist Church. And I purposely held off on the contract till next month with the Methodist Church, just because I wanted to have that discussion with you first, and so we'll put that on for approval.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Moving on. Do we have any people signed up for community input? All right. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. And this month's consent agenda includes the approval of the following: April 11th regular meeting minutes, April 12th policy committee meeting proceedings, April 25th special meeting minutes and workshop proceedings, May 2nd finance personnel committee proceedings, April's treasurer report and vouchers and invoices, Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchasing Cooperative 66.0301 agreement, food service department expenditure, and the personnel report. Does any board member would like to separate out any of these items for separate discussion and votes?
No.
All right.
Well, I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, further discussion? All right, then can we have a roll call vote?
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Andrea Grimm.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, the motion passes. Okay. For the action, specific action items, moving on, would anyone like to make a motion about the health insurance?
Actually, I'm just quick redoing my Robert's Rules of Order. It's just to make sure that we're doing this the correct way. So it just states when members of a body do not want an item on the agenda to be considered, then such a motion to table it or defeat it straight up is necessary.
Okay,
So I would just
then do we
recommend
have,
tabling it.
would anyone like to make the proposed motion? Then would anyone like to table the proposed motion?
I move the board table the conversation about the district health insurance contribution.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion on the tabling of the motion? Okay, could I have a roll call vote on the tabling of the motion?
Andrea Grimm.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, we will table that and discuss it at a future date for health insurance for the district. Moving on, the professional staff contracts for the 2022-2023 school year. This is a ceremonial issue or a ceremonial thing that the board has to do because of the non-renewal, the teacher's contract automatically renew if non-renewal, so.
I move the board approve the professional teaching contracts for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
I will second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the issue? Hearing none, I'd like a roll call vote.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Andrea Grimm.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, the motion passes. Moving on to the 2022 summer school contracts. The list of teachers is for the summer school. It's a wonderful list with lots of Lake Mills Area School District teachers and aides, so I think that that's a positive. It's attached to the school board. Do I have a motion for approval of the contracts?
I move the board approve the 2022 summer school contracts as presented.
Second? It's been moved and seconded. Are there any further discussions?
Can I just ask, is this a typical like turnout for our in-district staff to participate? I know that we had talked about that change in wages for our district. Is this more than what we've seen, less than, similar, comparable?
I don't know, because I've been here through COVID, so I would say it's definitely much, much better than last year. And Amanda Thompson has done a wonderful job on organizing summer school and talking to individuals personally that she knew would be a good fit for certain classes, but this is a really nice turnout of teachers from the district that are teaching this summer.
Is there any other discussion? All right, I'd like a roll call vote on the motion.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Andrea Graham.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. Right, moving on, and the overnight student trip for the Fine Arts Weekend. The board is being asked to approve the overnight trip for high school students interested in the fine arts. It says it'll take place the weekend of September 23rd, 24th, and 2022 at Spring Green. They reportedly have said Fine Arts Weekend for over 20 years and looking for approval of this trip.
I'll move the board approve the Fine Arts Weekend trip as presented. It is understood that the board will incur no cost and will accept no liability for any funds lost for any reason.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any further discussion? All right. If hearing none, I will call for a roll call vote on the motion.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Andrea Graham.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the next item, creation of an at-risk teaching position. This I feel was discussed earlier in the meeting with the Crossroads Activity Program, the moving from that Johnson Creek to our district this year unexpectedly. And with that, we have to have a motion to create a new position.
I move the board approve the at-risk teaching position for the high school alternative program.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I'm curious now, sorry, about, is it going to be a problem to hire, like, certified in that, with that certification? Do you foresee any issues? Are we going to need to offer any incentive, or I'm just wondering about that?
I mean, we'll see what we get for applicants if somebody is licensed, and then, if we need to help someone with a provisional license, if they're a good fit, then we will go that route instead.
Any other discussion? Questions? All right, I will call for a roll call vote for the motion.
Andrea Graham.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, moving on to the high school roofing bid that was discussed earlier. Do we have a proposed motion?
I move the board approve the high school roofing bid to Badgerland Roofing in the amount of $42,980.
I'll second the motion.
This was again the lowest bid and the recommended bid because of the relationship with Rod Hutchins. That the relation, not relations, but the working relations that he's had with Badgerland, so. Can someone make, are there any discussions? Then I ask for a roll call vote on the motion.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Andrea Graham.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right. Bob D'Imperio always said that it's wonderful to have such a generous community, and I will concur with that wholeheartedly with the list of gifts that are always on the agenda listed. So, proposed motions to accept the gifts.
I move the board accept the following gifts and thank the generous donors for their continued support of our students and programs at the Lake Mills Area School District. There was a donation of $250 from the Lake Mills Moravian Church to the mill at the high school, a $500 donation from the Town Line Mothers Club to the 18 through 21-year-old transition program, and a $500 donation from the Kelly Williamson Company to the high school's math and science departments.
And I would add that just the overwhelming support of families last week during Teacher Appreciation Week was just unbelievable. Just an outpouring of support from the community. It was just really nice to see.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
I second.
Okay, motion's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Kirk Lund.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Andrea Graham.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye. All right, for upcoming board agenda items, we have the student dues and fees, the second reading of the policy updates, the WIA membership for the 2022-2023 school year, 4K site agreement with United Methodist Church. Are there any others?
We will be bringing a proposal for staff raises as well to you.
And I think you mentioned bringing the, was it the health insurance?
Health insurance discussion, yep. Up. So, any others that want to be added? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? All right, we are adjourned.